All right, we'll just wait for your colleagues to find their places. Barry's got a clean shirt on today, which is always encouraging.
Jacket just in case, eh, Barry?
Go to the bottom of that. So I'm very pleased to confirm that Jacinda Ardern has been confirmed unanimously as the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. So great to have Jacinda on board. Jacinda has a strong background in campaigning, a strong advocate on issues like child wellbeing, and picked up more recently portfolios like justice, and been great in that. So fantastic to have Jacinda here. Jacinda will, as a deputy, like all deputies, will have a different role perhaps from predecessors, but Jacinda and I will be taking every opportunity we can to get out and about as part of the campaign this year to reach out to a bunch of people who Jacinda represents, which is those people who have been neglected by this government, the people who are missing out on getting their own home, who have paid for their own education, and now, if this government has its way, will have to work longer and harder before they become entitled to superannuation. Jacinda is the voice of that generation. That's very important to us and will be an important part of our campaign for this year.
Were there any challenges?
No, unanimously supported by the caucus.
And I'm very grateful for that support from my caucus. I had an opportunity to touch base with everyone before the vote, and had some great conversations and feel really buoyed by the support that the team's giving me for this job.
Have you reshuffled portfolios at all?
Just in the final stages of that, still a few discussions to go, so hopefully we'll have that concluded very soon. Today, most likely.
Do you believe, Jacinda, that you can bring in the younger vote? I mean, these are people that traditionally haven't really got out, haven't been that charged with the elections.
I believe our ideas will bring in the younger voters. In stark contrast to what we saw yesterday from the government, they've basically said anyone from 1972 will be paying for the costs of Bill English not putting in any contributions to save for people's future retirement. That's already a generation who have paid for their own education and who are looking at not being able to own their own home as well. So my hope is the fact that we are challenging the government on that front, that we have the ideas that will make a difference for them. I think it's that will bring those voters out.
Nikki Kay has deliberately has targeted you this morning, in particular Jacinda, saying that you're someone who has in the past wanted the super age to be increased, and you're letting the voters and people down. What do you say?
I absolutely support the position that Andrew has, firmly staking in the ground that we support keeping the age where it is. The argument that I always made was about making sure there was affordability. And as Andrew has reiterated, we want to make contributions to the savings scheme to ensure we were able to afford people's retirement. Bill English has not done that. He's delayed contributions to the super fund, and he's essentially said that it's my generation that's going to pick up the tab.
So, Mr. Little, would you have borrowed money to put money into the super fund?
Yes, there is a case for that. The returns have been superior to just about anywhere else. There is a case this government's been borrowing anyway. There is a case to use some of those funds to put into the super fund to keep that fund up to speed, so it is there to partially fund the future cost of superannuation.
So would you do that in the future as a government or are you committed to putting the money back in only with surpluses?
Well, all the projections now are showing surpluses in the future. The super fund ought to be a first and priority call on those future surpluses. I mean, we've got that fund was set up for a reason, because this idea that the cost of superannuation is increasing in the 2020s and 2030s is not new. We've all seen that coming. This government, up to now, had a different view. But we've got to resume those contributions to the New Zealand Super Fund as quickly as possible, and we will do so.
So you're happy to borrow money to invest in the share market, because that's essentially what is being done?
The returns that the New Zealand Super Fund have achieved have been superior to just about every other managed fund in the country.
The share market's not a one-way bet, is it?
And you look at the track record of the New Zealand Super Fund, it has been a superior performer compared to just about any other managed fund in the country. And it makes sense when we have the quality of management that we've got, but also the need that we've got in terms of future funding of superannuation to have maintained those payments into that fund.
Are you worried that Jacinda's popularity will overtake yours soon?
No, There's only one leader of the party, it's me, and we are a team, and we're campaigning together to win government on the 23rd of September.
So
I'm
you
here
are-
to see Andrew Little elected as Prime Minister, nothing else.
So what would you do if in the next preferred Prime Minister polls you are ahead of him?
I won't be.
But you might be.
I won't be.
What happens then?
I'm here to be the deputy to Andrew Little, to campaign hard to see Labour change the government and to see Andrew as Prime Minister of New Zealand. As deputy, my job will be to support him, and that's wholeheartedly what I'm committed to doing.
So
I do want to add as well that Andrew asked me to do this job. Andrew nominated me. I'm here because Andrew has supported me to take on this role, and I'm going to be reciprocating by making sure he has the job of Prime Minister in 6 months' time.
It puts you in a really hard position though, doesn't it? If you're more popular than your leader.
No, it does not, because I won't be.
It's a Labor Party campaign. It's led by myself and Jacinda. We are campaigning as the leaders of the party. That's what the next 6 months will be about, because so many New Zealanders are missing out and are looking for a change. And we're going to convince New Zealanders that the plan that we have on a whole heap of fronts is way better than anything on offer right now. That's what we're campaigning for, and that's what we're both committed to, as is every single one of our colleagues in caucus, and I'm pleased to say every candidate who's been selected in the last few months.
It's unusual for a leadership to have a dual campaign. Normally it's the person aspiring to be Prime Minister. So you'll be using Jacinda throughout the campaign, will you?
We're both campaigning together. We are a team. Jacinda's now got electorate responsibilities. I think when the writs come in, she'll have electorate responsibilities too. So there'll be stuff that she has to do, and there'll be stuff that I do. But we will be taking every opportunity we can to get into every community in New Zealand and get our message out about the plans that we've got, which is about fairness and opportunity for every New Zealander, and New Zealanders no longer missing out.
There's nothing unusual about a deputy playing a support role.
No, but not as publicly as clearly what you intend to do.
It's not unusual to be at a few public meetings and be alongside the leader. I don't think that's new at all.
Will Jacinda's face be on the bus next to yours, or is it just going to be yours?
Oh, we're doing buses.
I haven't organised it. We haven't. I don't think the campaign team's got that far ahead yet.
Very
We'll
pro
let you
public
know.
transport though.
Are you going to be milking Jacinda's brand though? Is she going to be featuring on all your advertising material, billboards, your buses, that type of stuff?
I'm sure Jacinda is going to be working very hard, just as I will be, to reach out to get every vote we can to change the government in September, and we will use whatever means we can to do that. The campaign detail we don't get to control. We're on the campaign team, but as far as I'm aware, we're not that far ahead in terms of who decides what goes on what bus.
Just back on super, the government this morning, a number of ministers saying that Labour has flip-flopped over and over again on this. What do you say to that?
That's just sheer and utter hypocrisy, and really that's just a cover for this government's absolute reckless disregard for the future of superannuation. So the minute they were elected, they stopped making contributions to that savings account that was set up for the future cost of superannuation. That's the disgraceful conduct of this government. And they can point the finger and say whatever they like. That will sit at their feet and sit like a millstone round their neck, actually, come election time. This government, in office right now, with Bill English as Finance Minister and now as Prime Minister, has failed the future for so many New Zealanders in announcing what he announced yesterday, and we're not going to have a bar of it.
If this happens, you'll get to retire 2 years before Jacinda. How's that, Jacinda?
And the fact that Andrew's pointing out the issues around the fairness of that, in context as well, because it's not just about the age, it's that the age is now being thrust upon a generation that this government has ignored in so many other ways. We'll be carrying the burden of debt for many of the things that the government has postponed. And so the fact that Andrew sees the lack of fairness in that and is defending that generation, I think is incredibly important.
That's your generation. Did you have a student loan, and how long did it take?
I made certain life choices, like living at home. That meant that I didn't carry a student loan, but it did change the decisions over where I studied.
Do you guys feel that the national government is pandering to baby boomers?
I don't think it's about offsetting one generation against another. It's about acknowledging what the baby boom generation had access to, and the fact that I've noticed they care very much about how their children and grandchildren are being affected by policy decisions like this. So I don't think this has to be a generational war, but an acknowledgement of what's gone before and which generation are carrying the burden in the future.
I suspect what's underlying it is that the National Party have discovered that they have a leader who's getting little traction. Everything he does pretty much turns to custard, so they make a big water announcement. It turns out they're supporting more polluted water. They won't accept that there is a housing crisis. The Prime Minister describes it as a mark of success. And I think they are desperate to demonstrate to whoever's looking anymore that they can be bold and courageous. So they've done this thing. It's not that bold, it's not that courageous. They've said the law change won't happen until next year and it won't take effect until 2040. So that's what's driving this.
Just the way that you've been talking seems to be that you are talking about a generational gap, essentially. You know, do you think there is a gap between baby boomers and people who are in the generations behind them? Is it unfair on the people behind them?
It's definitely unfair on the people behind them, but I think this is a mark of a tired, out-of-touch government. They don't understand what the impact of their announcement, actually they're sort of stumbling through it over the weekend, has had on a lot of people, and particularly young people now who have little expectation of ever owning their own home, who know that they carry a big burden of debt for their studies, and now are being told, and you're going to work a couple of years longer. They don't get that, and that's the difference.
Are you concerned that in New Zealand society there is a generational gap emerging? Does that concern you, that there is this gap emerging between the baby boomers that have a lot and people behind them that don't? Does that worry you?
It seems to me that we are putting a lot of cost on one group of people of a generation, and others who have had the benefit of, admittedly they've worked hard, paid their taxes, and get provided for. And it's not about take something off them to give to the others. It's about having a system that's fair overall. The good thing about our New Zealand super scheme is that we have one of the lowest levels of elder poverty in the world. Well, we should hold on to that. We should maintain that. But there's a whole heap of other people who actually are being denied opportunity because of a failure of government policy. This government in particular, and you need to fix that up.
You seem to be writing the sustainability of superannuation solely on restarting contributions to the super fund. Is that all you think that needs to happen, or do you have anything else for your retirement policy?
We need to resume those contributions. The magnitude of saving the government is talking about in the bigger scheme of things is barely negligible. It comes down to this government's failure to put money aside in that savings account for the future cost of superannuation. They haven't done it. It's $20 billion behind now. It's going to take a huge effort to catch up. But if the Treasury projections are anything to go by, those future surpluses look healthy. That should be one of the first calls on those surpluses, is to put money back into that.
And you're saying you would borrow to do those contributions. So who's going to be having to pay back that borrowing? Which generation?
But the projections now are such that we are going to have to borrow. There are healthy surpluses being generated. But I suspect if it comes down to an argument about, gee, we've got surpluses, let's have big tax cuts, or gee, we've got surpluses, let's actually invest in the things that we failed to invest in up to now. New Zealand Super, of course, things like housing, things like education, things like health. Our position will be, let's invest in the things that are supporting people and giving opportunity and creating fairness.
But you're telling New Zealanders that one of your key ways to meet this growing population boom in the future is that you will borrow some of the money now.
No. The government has been borrowing. This government's borrowed $80 billion since it came to government.
Super contributions.
Because now the government's books are generating the type of surpluses that we saw in the last Labor government for 9 years. So it is time to say, well, what is the order of priority for the use of those surpluses? It's got to be, a first call has to be resuming the contributions to the New Zealand Super Fund.
Social service spending?
Well, you've got to make a range of choices, but I said a first call, not the only call, but a first call has got to be on resuming those contributions to New Zealand Super. We have a range of other problems that we want to deal with, and that are good and important priorities too. The surpluses that are projected allow now a lot more scope to do the stuff and investing in people that have missed out for too long, and that's the difference between our two parties.
You did say before that you would borrow if you needed to.
In the same circumstances that the government was in when it started borrowing its $80 billion, yeah, we would have made sure those contributions to New Zealand Super continued, because we're now $20 billion behind. The net benefit would have been at least another $7 or $8 billion. That does make sense.
But by refusing to do anything about the age, aren't you still burdening that younger generation? You just delaying it. You're still going to have to pick up the tab, and the over 45s will be fine. So your policy exacerbates that problem.
No, I don't accept that. And I go back to what drives me is my experience, 20 years of working alongside working people, many of whom struggle to get to 65 now and retire and get New Zealand super.
Them like your form of policy,
So
they're not the bulk of superannuitants, though.
there's a large number of them. So then you have an exemption for them. So then what about, for example, Māori and Pacifica, whose life expectancy is shorter and who don't get the benefit of it? So you have an exemption for them. And then you have the people who start, because they're on national superannuation, get to reduce their work hours and their days of work. So you have an exemption for them.
The younger generations.
So you
the younger generation should pay for those people.
So you come back to what is the easiest, most simple, most efficient mechanism. It is universal superannuation. We can afford it. We can afford it. And we can afford it through ongoing GDP growth, because when you have a look at what this government has said about what adding another 2 years of work life will do by 2040, the saving is negligible. If affordability was the question, this government would have acted well before now and resumed contributions to the New Zealand Super Fund.
4 years ago, your party's finance spokesperson was arguing it was absolutely not affordable and the government had its head in the sand for not moving on the age.
2.5 years ago, I campaigned around the country and stood for the leadership of the party on the basis that I did not support raising the age of eligibility for superannuation. It is now the party policy. That is Labour's policy. That's what we're going into this election campaign with.
Do you really think
Did you
18 and
believe in that
20-year-olds
policy at
and
the last
people who are
election,
going...
Jacinda, or were you just paying it lip service?
I believed in making sure that there was a universal superannuation available for my generation.
But you believe that should
And I
be
believe it
raised.
will be available for my generation if we resume our contributions. And I absolutely support the position that Andrew has taken on this.
But you supported the party's policy back then.
And I absolutely support the position that Andrew has taken on this.
Have you expected you would be able to retire at 65?
Had I expected that,
Yeah,
or
had you ever expected, as a millennial or a Gen
unless
X?
we change the government, I won't be.
Do you think that this is something that 18 and 20-year-olds or people who are voting for the first time are really worried about? Are they really thinking about their retirement?
I think that they're looking at whether or not there's a government that's interested in their views. And what I think there's been a misstep on this idea that they're just simply self-interested voters. They care about issues like climate change. They care about issues like whether or not children who live in poverty are being well cared for, about whether or not there are warm, dry homes for people to live in. These are the issues that I hear young people talk to me about. We've got a suite of ideas that really brings kindness back into government, and that's what I hear from that generation of voters. They want a community that has a government that cares about them, and so I think that's what will bring them out to vote.
Do you think it'll put voters off that you were the president of International Socialists?
No, I think it will barely register, Lloyd.
What even is the International Socialists?
I can give you a quick info session after this if you'd like, run you through it.
It sounds quite scary.
Yeah, it's an umbrella organisation for political youth organisations from around the world. It's been around for over 100 years. Groups like Young Labour in Australia and New Zealand were members.
Bernie Sanders was involved in it, I think, at some point.
As was Helen. It's a long-standing organisation.
Can I just quickly ask on another issue on the gender pay gap? Do you think there's bias in the workplace towards women?
Well, if you look at the pay differential and the systemic pay differential, yeah, of course there is.
What needs to be done? How do you fix that?
Well, we need a pay equity system that actually works. So we've had the Equal Pay Act since 1972. It's taken until the last couple of years for a union, a group of workers, their lawyers, to actually get a case in front of the court and shove it all the way up the top of the court system to get some traction, to get some action. Now, absolutely heroic effort on their part, but now what we need is a system that is easily accessible for workers to get those pay equity issues, equality of pay issues sorted out and determined, and get decisions much more quickly than this one is happening in.
Do you think there's any industry that it's particularly prevalent in?
Well, I think, the Christine Bartlett case, which comes out of home care workers, and then you've got the aged care workers, people working in retirement homes, women-dominated industries where there just is this inexplicably, systemically low level of pay, and it beggars belief, it defies explanation, and we've got to fix that up. There's no reason why mainly women, but also men, looking after some of our most vulnerable, our elderly, including making sure they're comfortable, they're getting fed, that they are warm, that they're getting their meds, should be paid at pretty much close to the minimum wage. That is outrageous given the responsibilities they've got.
What would Labor do across the board? Because how do you force workplaces in any industry to pay women the same as men?
Well, you have a system that is easier to access. I mean, it shouldn't have required Christine and the union to go through all the hoops that they've gone through, including going to the highest court in the land to get a determination to say, actually, you know what, there is a case here. We'll give you a chance to sort it out before we make a final determination. And what's 2 years or more it's been? That's crazy. So we have to have an accessible system so groups of workers and the unions who see a question can take it there, get a decision, get it implemented, obviously work with the employers affected as well.
Yeah,
What
but
do you
shouldn't it
think
be
is
about working
behind
with the
it?
employees, working with the
Yep.
employees first, rather
Yeah.
than it being a latter thing? Shouldn't it be when someone's employed that they're paid equally?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
isn't it about changing employers and bosses?
yep, you've got to work with them. But yeah, I mean, pay equity is pay equity. Equal pay for work of equal value is capable of a determination. That shouldn't be, the subject then of an employer saying, oh, but, we're not going to do it, it's wrong, it's unfair for us. Equal pay for work of equal value is the principle. So you have a determination about that. And yeah, over time, then you do change attitudes, you do change culture, and employers think, yeah, you know what, this work is of this value, we're not going to discriminate anymore, we're going to pay properly.
What do you think is behind the gender pay gap?
It will be decades and decades of discrimination, prejudice, undervaluing women.
What do you say to employers who do pay women differently, whether it's subconsciously or not?
Time to get into the 21st century.
Can't you just make it illegal?
Well, we have a law, a 1972 law, that has taken the best part of 40 years to make work, and there is a problem there. So we will have to go back and have a look at the law, and in the end it's about having a mechanism that people can access easily, efficiently, and get decisions and get change made.
Just lastly, portfolios. Are you keeping the same portfolios, or are you going to get finance, or what?
Andrew will be announcing the final decision on portfolios later this afternoon, I believe.
Given my commitment that Grant Robertson will be the Finance Minister in the next Labor-led government, I can assure you I'm not changing the finance portfolio allocation.
What portfolio do you want, Jacinda?
Oh, I have already on the record as saying that there are a few gems that I certainly don't want to let go of, and children and child wellbeing is certainly up there.
And I listen to my deputy.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Good start.